Subscribe to LearnCap and hit the bell icon to get notified.
The next change in registration. Friends, we know the flow of registration. Section 23. If you're a person who is covered under Section 23, you are not at all liable to be registered. Since you are not at all liable to be registered, you are not a taxable person. GST law itself doesn't apply upon you. If you are not covered under Section 23, please check Section 24. If you are covered under Section 24, get yourself registered immediately because it is the case of compulsory registration. If you are not covered under Section 24 as well, by default you fit into Section 22. You can obtain registration after you cross the threshold. And if you do not want to follow any of these, under Section 25 subsection 3, you can get yourself voluntarily registered. Now friends, as regards as Section 22 is concerned, there's an amendment. Now friends, first the basics of Section 22. We are just brushing up the basics. Section 22 subsection 1 tells you, you have to get registered in that state from where you make a taxable supplies in case if your aggregate turnover exceeds rupees 20 lakhs. You have to get yourself registered in that state from where you make a taxable supply in case your aggregate turnover exceeds rupees 20 lakh rupees. Now friends, the first proviso tells you, in case if you are making a taxable supply from any of the special category states, 20 lakh rupees has to be read down as 10 lakh rupees. The second proviso tells you, the government may, at the request of any of the special category states, enhance their threshold from 10 lakh rupees to 20 lakh rupees. So these are the basics which we have already done. There's no change over here. Now the change which comes is, you have another proviso. Third proviso being added to Section 22 subsection 1, and this is again nothing new proviso. The provisions which were there in notification number 10/2019 central tax, which further enhanced the threshold from 20 lakh rupees to 40 lakh rupees for those persons who are engaged exclusively in supply of goods. Those provisions which were there in that notification are imported in Section 22 itself, by means of adding a third proviso to Section 22 subsection 1. So now the proviso reads, provided also that the government may, at the request of a state and on the recommendations of council, enhance the aggregate turnover. They can enhance the aggregate turnover from 20 lakh rupees to such amount not exceeding 40 lakh rupees in case of supplier who is engaged exclusively in supply of goods, subject to such conditions and limitations as may be notified. So friends, on a broader sense, the provisions which were there in notification number 10/2019 central tax are imported into Section 22 itself by means of inserting a proviso, that is the third proviso in Section 22 subsection 1. Now friends, one may question that after this is being done, after this provisions of 10/2019 have been inserted in the section itself, after it being inserted in the section itself, is 10/2019 withdrawn, or does the notification number 10/2019 which was issued under Section 23? Please be careful friends. Notification number 10/2019 was issued under Section 23, exemption from obtaining registration for a person who is engaged exclusively in supply of goods if his aggregate turnover doesn't exceed rupees 40 lakhs. Is this notification withdrawn, or does this notification become useless? The answer is no. This notification still prevails. This notification which is issued under Section 23 still prevails, because even though the wordings are inserted in Section 22 itself, Section 22 also demands a notification to be issued. Here the power doesn't flow directly, the answer doesn't come directly from the section itself. A notification also has to be issued under Section 22 to enhance the limit from 20 lakhs to 40 lakhs. Please read along again. Here it tells you, provided also that the government may, at the request of a state and on the recommendations of council, enhance the aggregate turnover from 20 lakh to such amount not exceeding 40 lakh rupees in case of a supplier who is engaged exclusive in supply of goods, subject to such conditions and limitations as may be notified. So friends, as of today, as of today, no notification has come under section 22. Even though the provisions are imported under section 22, still effectively we could say that this is not effective because notification so far has not been issued under section 22. So therefore, the taxpayers, they could still take, the assessees could still take the benefit of notification number 10/2019, which is issued under section 23, which is not withdrawn and which is still in force. But however, friends, as regards as this section is concerned, they have tried to clarify one thing, which was in which there was an element of doubt in notification number 10/2019. Notification number 10/2019 told you that the enhanced threshold benefit would be available only for a person who is dealing exclusively in supply of goods. Only for a person who is dealing exclusively in supply of goods. Now, there were doubts which were raised from the businessmen stating that, let's suppose there's a person whose turnover is 38 lakh rupees. Let's suppose there's a person whose turnover is 38 lakh rupees. He is dealing exclusively only in supply of goods. He deals exclusively only in supply of goods. However, out of this 38 lakh rupees, 2 lakh rupees is interest income which is earning. 2 lakh rupees is interest income which is earning. Now the question was, can this person enjoy the enhanced threshold? Can this person enjoy the enhanced threshold? Because now he cannot be said to be a person who is dealing exclusively in supply of goods. He cannot be said to be a person who is dealing exclusively in supply of goods because he is also receiving consideration in the form of interest, wherein the supply was a supply of service by means of extending money or by means of giving money to other people. So now therefore, friends, the question which was there in notification number 10/2019 was a person who is earning interest income. Will he also be called as a person who is dealing exclusive in supply of goods? There was an element of doubt. There was no clarification of the government in that aspect. However, things seems to be clarified as regards as section 22 subsection 1 is concerned. Here they have inserted an explanation. So this explanation reads it: for the purposes of this subsection, a person shall be considered to be engaged exclusively in supply of goods, even if he is engaged in exempt supply of services provided by way of extending deposits, loans and advances, insofar as the consideration is represented by interest or discount. Friends, please be very, very careful with the wordings. They do not tell that if you're supplying any exempt service. If you're supplying any exempt service, we will treat you as an exclusive supplier of goods. The answer is no. They tell you if you're supplying exempt service in the form of interest, if you're receiving exempt supply of services provided by way of extending deposits and loans and the consideration which you receive is in the form of interest, then we will give you the relaxation. We will treat you as though you are an exclusive supplier of goods. So friends, this benefit is available only and only for a person who is having interest income as an exempted income. So however, friends, as we already discussed, so far under section 22, there is no notification which is being issued. So the notification number 10/2019 central tax, which is issued under section 23, is still going to continue till any notification under section 22 is being issued, giving effect to the third proviso to section 22. So this is 10/2019, which is issued under 23 subsection 2. This still holds good and will still hold good till a notification under section 22 is being issued. Now friends, just let's have a comparative look at notification number 10/2019, which is issued under 23 subsection 2, and the wordings of 22 subsection 1 third proviso read with the notification which is yet to be issued. This notification under section 22 is not being issued so far. Let's have a look. The threshold, both say the same threshold. Even section 23 subsection 2, the notification 10/2019 tells you the same threshold of 40 lakhs along with certain conditions. Here also it is 40 lakhs subject to conditions and notifications as may come up. The product, here it is only goods. Notification number 10/2019 tells you this benefit will be available only to a person who is exclusively engaged in supply of goods. There is no reference whatsoever to any interest income. Whether a person who is earning interest income will also get the benefit of this notification, the notification is silent and there is no clarity from government as regards as this aspect is concerned. However, as regards as section 22 subsection 1 is concerned, the explanation clearly tells you that goods and interest, if there's any person who is exclusively engaged in supply of goods and if he is also earning interest income, then he will be treated for the purpose of section 22 subsection 1 as though he is engaged exclusively in supply of goods. Applicability. Here, this notification 10/2019 will not be applicable to these states, that is your special category states, and these few states which were there. This notification is not going to apply. To Arunachal Pradesh, you have Sikkim, you have Telangana, you have Uttarakhand, you have Meghalaya and you have Puducherry. So for these states, this notification 10/2019, any person who is engaged in making intra-state supply of goods in these states cannot take the benefit of this notification. As regards as the notification under 22 subsection 1 is concerned, it is still to be issued. So we are still to see which states are not going to be covered in the notification whenever it is going to come up. As regards as interest is concerned, interest in aggregate turnover. Now here, will interest form a part of aggregate turnover? The answer is yes. Friends, please don't get confused. There are two different aspects. One is just because a person is having interest income, he becomes ineligible to opt the benefit of notification is a different question. And the question number 2 is whether interest will exhaust the threshold is a different question. Now say for example, let's suppose as a person whose aggregate turnover, is 38 lakh rupees. Now out of which 2 lakh rupees is from interest income. Is he eligible to choose the benefit of this enhanced threshold? The answer is yes, he will still be treated as an exclusive supplier of goods. We are discussing about 22 subsection 1. Let's say there's a person whose total turnover is, let's say, 42 lakh rupees. Let's suppose there's a person whose aggregate turnover is 42 lakh rupees and out of which, let's say, 3 lakh rupees is from interest income. Person's aggregate turnover is 42 lakh rupees, out of which 3 lakh rupees is from interest income. Now the question is, friends, is he liable to be registered? Is he liable to be registered? The answer is yes. He is liable to be registered because his aggregate turnover has crossed 40 lakh rupees. Your interest income will exhaust your aggregate turnover. Even though you do not become ineligible to choose the enhanced threshold of 40 lakh rupees, that is a different scenario, and your interest income exhausting your threshold is a different scenario. As regards as interest income exhausting your threshold is concerned, even though 3 lakh rupees is included in this 42 lakh rupees, aggregate turnover still is 42 lakh rupees. You are liable to be registered even under 22 subsection 1. Interest will exhaust your threshold limit. So as regards as will your interest be counted while you are computing your aggregate turnover? The answer is yes for 10/2019. It is also yes for section 22 subsection 1. Another change in the area of registration. Now friends, as regards as ease of doing business is concerned, if there is one area where the ease of doing business is very evident, it is in the area of registration. Now if you compare pre-GST laws and if you compare GST laws, the registration process has simplified to a larger extent. In the pre-GST law, if a person had to get himself registered, let's suppose either in excise or he wants to get registered in service tax or he wanted to get registered in VAT, on submitting of application, registration would have been given to him only after the place of business has been physically verified. The place of business and the person in charge has been physically verified by the officer. Only thereafter the registration was granted to the business. However, in order to improve the ease of doing business, registration is quickly granted within a period of 3 working days, and physical verification either of the person or of the premises, if any, even if it has to be done, it has to be done only after granting the registration. Any physical inspection to be done only after granting the registration. So here the registration process became quite simple in GST. Now, this simple process of registration, there were many people who took undue advantage. there were many people, or there are still many people who are taking undue advantage of this registration process. So there is something called as fly-by-night operators. Fly-by-night operators. So they take registration quickly using the system to its advantage. They take registration quickly. They raise fake invoices. They take registration quickly. They create a number of shell companies. They create a number of fake companies. They create fake invoices. They raise fake invoices, and input tax credit is being passed on to the other recipients. Say for example, quickly a person takes registration. He creates a number of dummy companies. He takes registration quickly, taking advantage of the system. He gets himself registered in 3 days. Thereafter, he just files his GSTR1. He may not even file GSTR3B, and the credit is being transferred to another shell company. Likewise, from one shell company to another company, a series of shell companies being created, and thereafter the credit gets transferred, creating a huge revenue loss to the government. Any fake invoice racket which the government has found out, it is always for a minimum number of crores. It is at least 100 of crores for which the fake racket is being busted by the government. Now this is because of the flexibility which is there in the system to give you registration quickly. Now this person would file GSTR1. He might also file GSTR3B. Let's suppose the first person who wants to transfer the credit, he would file his GSTR1, he would also file his GSTR3B, and he would pay the taxes in 3B using the credit which he has not even got. He would simply say, my credit is so much, he would pay the taxes, and now the dummy credit is being transferred. There's no real output tax liability. There is actually no movement of goods. There is no commercial transaction which has happened. All these series of companies have been created only and only with the intention to defraud the government. So now friends, by the time the government finds out the first person in the chain, the credit would have been already transferred, let's suppose, to 5 or 6 chains down the line. So by the time the government finds out this person, and to the government's surprise, it is being found out that this person is not even aware that a registration has been taken in his name. So there are all dummy IDs which are created, and registration is taken on a fake basis. So in order to arrest this, the first step which the government has taken is started from registration. Now they have made Aadhaar number compulsory if a person wants to obtain registration. So with this intention to check the menace of fake invoicing, the government has strengthened the registration process by making Aadhaar authentication compulsory. Now friends, as regards as registration is concerned, now as of today, if the government wants to strengthen this, if the government wants to tighten the fake invoices, now there are so many people who are already registered today. And there are persons who are going to apply for registration in the coming future. So therefore, Aadhaar authentication is made mandatory for both, for the persons who are already registered. You might have already been registered, you would have taken registration prior to this amendment coming into force, but still, if you are a registered person, you also have to carry out the process of Aadhaar authentication. So now friends, with this background, let us read the new subsections which have been introduced in section 25. Section 25 tells you the process of registration. So in 25, subsection 6A, the new subsection which is being introduced, it tells you every registered person. So this subsection is specifically speaking about those persons who have already registered themselves on the portal. Every registered person shall undergo authentication or furnish proof of possession of Aadhaar number in such form and manner and within such time as may be prescribed. Now friends, so far as 25 subsection 6A is concerned, no notification has been released as of yet. It simply tells you in the form and manner as may be prescribed, every registered person shall undergo authentication or he shall furnish the proof of possession of Aadhaar number in such form and manner as may be prescribed. So far, nothing has been prescribed. Provided that if the Aadhaar number is not assigned, let's suppose the registered person is not having an Aadhaar number, the government will give you alternative means of authenticating himself. So this alternative means is obviously going to be physical verification of the person and physical verification of the premises. Now friends, here also so far no alternative means has been provided, but whenever it is going to come this only, it is going to be physical verification of the person as well as the premise. So friends, 25(6)(a) tells you every registered person has to authenticate his Aadhaar number. The second proviso tells you, in case if a person is failing to do so, in case if a person is failing to undergo authentication or he is failing to furnish the proof of possession of Aadhaar number, then it would be treated, his registration itself is invalid. It would be treated as though the person is an unregistered person, and all the provisions of the act would apply as if he is an unregistered person. That means he cannot collect taxes from any other person, he cannot issue tax invoice. Even if he is issuing a tax invoice, the recipient cannot be in a position to take credit if a person fails to authenticate, if a registered person fails to authenticate his Aadhaar. So 25(6)(a) is for existing registered persons. 25(6)(b). On and from the date of notification, this date of notification is with effect from 1st of April 2020. So on and from the date of notification, every individual, please understand, this 25(6)(b) is talking about individual. Every individual shall, in order to be eligible for grant of registration. Now, this is talking about new registrations being taken. 25(6)(a) was for existing registrations. 25(6)(b) is for new registration which is taken by an individual. On and from the date of notification, every individual shall, in order to be eligible for grant of registration, they will undergo authentication or furnish the proof of Aadhaar number in order to be eligible for obtaining registration. So without Aadhaar number, prima facie, you will not be eligible to get yourself registered under the GST law. However, for those persons who are not having, for those persons who are not in possession of an Aadhaar number, they will be given an alternative mechanism to authenticate themselves, and that alternative mechanism also has been notified. It is nothing but the physical verification of the premises, and that is your place of business, and the physical verification of the person himself. 25(6)(c). Now friends, as regards as 25(6)(b) is concerned, it covers only individual. As regards as 25(6)(b) is concerned, it covers only natural persons, that is individual. But of course, under GST, even persons other than the natural persons, that is your partnership firm, your body corporates, even they would apply for registration. So for them also, the process of authentication has been given. 25(6)(c). On and from the date of notification, every person other than an individual shall, in order to be eligible for grant of registration, undergo authentication or proof of possession of Aadhaar number of the Karta, the managing director, whole-time director or such number of partners, members of managing committee of association, board of trustees, authorized representatives or authorized signatories. So friends, in simple terms, as regards as 25(6)(c) is concerned, as regards as 25(6)(c) is concerned, it is Aadhaar authentication for non-individuals. The authorized representatives or the authorized signatories have to authenticate their Aadhaar in order the non-individual becomes eligible for registration. Now, in case if they do not possess an Aadhaar number, the government is going to give you alternative means, and the alternative means is already given. We are going to see the rules in which the alternative means are given. The alternative means is the physical verification of premises, that is the place of business, along with the physical verification of the person. Now friends, one interesting observation which is there, as regards as new registrations is concerned, in 25(6)(b) and in 25(6)(c), for new registrations, the government has covered both individuals as well as non-individuals who are going to apply for registration. But however, if you have a careful look at 25(6)(a), it doesn't cover non-individuals. It tells you every registered person shall undergo Aadhaar authentication, agreed, but here the Aadhaar authentication is the person who is applying for registration should be in possession of an Aadhaar. Here the authorized signatories, the authorized representatives are not covered as it is covered in 25(6)(c), as it is covered under 25 subsection 6(c). Now, what is the intention of the government? Is the intention of the government to cover only as regards as existing registered persons are concerned? Does the government wants to cover only individuals and not authenticate non-individuals? And as far as new registrations is concerned, the government wants to authenticate both individuals as well as non-individual registrations. This There is still clarity yet to come, but from the bare wordings of the section, 25(6)(a) doesn't have any provision to authenticate the Aadhaar numbers of authorized signatories or the authorized persons. As regards as new registrations is concerned, in 25(6)(c), the government has covered non-individuals. In 25(6)(b), the government has covered individuals. Now, Rule 8, Sub-Rule 4A. Now, this is the process of authentication which is there. Aadhaar authentication will be required for an applicant other than. So, whenever a person is going to apply registration, when he is going to fill up Part B of Form GST REG 01, an OTP will be going to his mobile number which is registered in his Aadhaar number. To that, he has to validate the OTP and he can authenticate his Aadhaar and he can provide the possession of Aadhaar number which he is having. So, Rule 8 Sub-Rule 4A tells you that whenever an applicant is making his registration filling Part B of Form REG 01, he has to authenticate his Aadhaar. So, Aadhaar authentication is required for whom? 8 Sub-Rule 4A tells you Aadhaar authentication is required for an applicant other than. Aadhaar authentication is required for an applicant other than non-resident taxable person, tax deductor, tax collector, OIDR supplying services to non-taxable online recipient. So friends, for these persons, Aadhaar authentication is not required. For these persons, even if they are applying a new registration, Aadhaar authentication will not be required. Now friends, as regards as registered persons are concerned in GST, registered persons, there could be taxpayers, there could be tax deductors and tax collectors, and there could be tax distributors. Registered persons in GST, you can have taxpayers, you can have tax deductors and tax collectors, that is your TDS and TCS, and you can have tax distributors, that is input service distributor, for whom you do not require Aadhaar authentication. Even if you are applying a new registration, is tax deductors and tax collectors, Aadhaar authentication is not required. Now friends, as regards as taxpayers is concerned, you can have, let's suppose for taxpayers, you can have an OIDR who is supplying services from a non-taxable territory. You can have a non-resident taxable person. You can have a person who is paying taxes under Section 10. You can have a person who is paying taxes under Section 10. You can have a person who is paying taxes under Section 9. So here it could be a regular person and he could be a casual taxable person. He could either be a regular person or he could be a casual taxable person. Note of all these players who are there in the GST ecosystem. You have taxpayers, you have tax deductors, tax collectors, you have tax distributors. How many registrations does demand an Aadhaar authentication? Here, as regards as tax distributors is concerned, yes, Aadhaar authentication is required, because 848 tells you any applicant other than NRTP, TDS deductor under 51, TDS collector under 52, OIDR supplying services to NTOR, other than these persons needs to get their Aadhaar authenticated. So friends, a tax distributor, any person who is applying registration as an input service distributor needs to get his Aadhaar authenticated. Tax deductor, tax collector, it is not required. As regards as taxpayer is concerned, OIDR person not required, NRTP not required. OIDR is not required, NRTP is not required, Section 10 yes required, casual taxable person required, regular person required. So these persons have to authenticate their Aadhaar. And friends, the exclusion is very, very logical. There is nothing which is illogical. Friends, please understand, as regards as tax deductor and tax collector is concerned, why they do not require an Aadhaar authentication? The simple reason is tax deductors and tax collectors are going to pay some revenue to the government. They cannot pass on the fake credits. Tax deductors and tax collectors, they cannot pass on the fake credit. Rather, their responsibility is to deduct the taxes and then pay to the government. And as we already discussed, this Aadhaar authentication is there only to check the menace of fake invoices, to check that the credits are not passed illegally. So tax deductors and tax collectors, even otherwise they cannot pass on the credit. So therefore, Aadhaar authentication is not required. Tax distributors, your input service distributors, yes, they are in the process of passing on the credits to their recipients. So therefore, here Aadhaar authentication is required. As regards as OIDR is concerned, he is a person who is located in non-taxable territory. Naturally, he will take registration only for his B2C supplies, because only for that he is liable to pay GST under forward charge mechanism. and OIDR who's sitting in non-taxable territory, when he supplies the services to NTOR, then he's supposed to take registration and pay taxes under forward charge mechanism. Two reasons. One, he is not in a position, his business model itself is not in a position to pass on the fake credits. So therefore, Aadhaar authentication is not required. Two, he is a person who's sitting in non-taxable territory, and for a person who's not a citizen of India, he will not possess an Aadhaar number. So therefore, Aadhaar authentication is not required. As regards as a non-resident taxable person is concerned, he is coming from a place outside India. He is not a citizen of India generally. So therefore, he would not have a possession. He would not possess an Aadhaar number. So therefore, Aadhaar authentication is not required in these cases. For the rest, all other cases, you do require an Aadhaar authentication. 25(6)(d). So we have seen 25(6)(a) for existing registrations, 25(6)(b) for individual new registrations, 25(6)(c) for non-individual new registrations. 25(6)(d), the provisions of subsection 6(a) and 6(b) or 6(c) shall not apply to such person or class of persons or any state or union territory or part thereof, as the government may, on the recommendations of council, specify by notification. So friends, as regards as 6(d) is concerned, it gives relaxation to some more people for Aadhaar authentication not required for those persons who are mentioned in 6(a), 6(b) and 6(c). Now what do you mean by Aadhaar? Aadhaar number means that which is mentioned in your Aadhaar Act. So now friends, this is the summary. As regards as 25(6)(a) is concerned, it is Aadhaar authentication for existing registered persons. It covers only individuals. Maybe this was not the intention of the government, but whatever it may be, the wordings, the bare wordings of the section 25(6)(a) seems to cover only individuals for existing registered persons. 25(6)(b) Aadhaar authentication for persons who is seeking new registrations, it is for individuals. 6(c) new registrations other than individuals. 6(d) it is relaxation from 6(a), 6(b) and 6(c). So now friends, what is pending in this is alternative means, rule number 9 and rule number 25. If a person doesn't possess an Aadhaar number, the government has to provide them. The government just cannot tell that you cannot take registration. The government has to provide them some alternative means to authenticate themselves. And notification 17/2020, which is issued under 25(6)(d), which is relaxing certain persons, they need not authenticate their Aadhaar. So first let's look into rule 9 and rule 25. As we already discussed, the alternative means is nothing but it is physical verification of the premises in presence of the person who has applied for registration. So both is going to be checked, the premises, the place of business, as well as the person who has applied for registration, their physical inspection is going to be carried out. So now friends, as we all know, if we could recollect rule number 25, under GST, can a proper officer physically verify the premises for the purpose of registration? The answer is yes, the officer can physically verify the premises, but only after he has granted the registration. Only after he has granted the registration, the officer can physically verify the premises. However, now rule 25 also stands amended. It tells you that if a person doesn't possess an invoice, if a person doesn't possess an Aadhaar number, for him registration would be granted only after the physical verification of premises. If a person is already possessing an Aadhaar number and if he has authenticated it, his premises also can be inspected, but his premises can be inspected after the registration has been granted. So post grant of registration, a person whose Aadhaar is authenticated, his premises could be verified. For a person who has not authenticated his Aadhaar, his premises will be verified before the grant of registration. This is the alternative means which has been provided. So let's have a look at rule number 9, where a person other than those who are notified under subsection 6(d). So 6(d) is nothing but those persons who are relaxed from Aadhaar authentication. Where a person other than those who are notified under subsection 6(d) of section 25 fails to undergo authentication of Aadhaar number, then the registration shall be granted only after physical verification of the principal place of business in presence of the said person. So therefore, physical verification of the principal place of business also, and it has to be done in the presence of the said person. So it indirectly becomes the physical verification of the said person also. and it shall be done not later than 60 days from the date of application. So whenever a person applies for registration, if he has not authenticated his Aadhaar, physical inspection of the principal place of business in presence of the said person has to be done not later than 60 days from the date of application. Now friends, please recollect the concept of deemed registration. Let's suppose if a person has applied for registration, for him or to him registration has to be granted within a period of 3 working days. If a person has applied for registration has to be granted to him within a period of 3 working days. If it is not granted to him within a period of 3 working days, then the registration shall deem to be granted. The system itself would generate the GST registration number. However, that provision of deemed registration has to now be amended, because now if a person who is not authenticating his Aadhaar, for him registration cannot be granted within a period of 3 working days. So the concept of deemed registration would not apply to those persons who have not authenticated their Aadhaar number. So it tells you in the manner. Alternative means the physical inspection has to be done within a period of not later than 60 days from the date of application in the manner provided under rule number 25. So rule number 25 just tells you that for non-authenticating the Aadhaar, physical verification before granting of registration. Other cases, physical verification after granting the registration. You have to go over there, physically inspect the premises, upload the documents and photographs within a period of 15 days from the date of doing or carrying out the physical inspection. This is what is mentioned in rule number 25. So in the manner which is provided under rule number 25, and the provisions of deemed registration in case of no action by PO shall not be applicable in such cases. So friends, in very simple terms, if you have authenticated your Aadhaar, registration would be given or deemed to be given to you in a period of 3 working days. Otherwise, registration would be given to you only after physical verification of premises in the presence of such person, and the concept of deemed registration would not apply. Physical verification rule number 25, where a proper officer is satisfied that the physical verification of place of business is required due to failure of Aadhaar authentication before the grant of registration or for any other reason after the grant of registration. The officer has got all right to access your premises for the purpose of registration, but in case if there is a failure to authenticate the Aadhaar, this inspection will be prior to grant of registration. In all other cases, if he still feels, even though Aadhaar is authenticated, still he feels that no, he does require an access to the physical premises, he wants to verify once, then he can still do so, but he can do so only after granting the registration. He may get such verification of the place of business in the presence of the said person done, and the verification report along with the other documents including the photographs shall be uploaded in form GST Reg 30 on common portal within a period of 15 working days following the date of such verification. So friends, it is very simple. He has to go physically verify the premises in the presence of said persons. The photographs and the other documents has to be uploaded within a period of 15 days from the date of such verification. Now friends, relaxation is concerned. Section 25(6)(d) empowers the government to issue a notification to relax certain persons from Aadhaar authentication. So now we go. The provisions of subsection 6b or subsection 6c of the said act shall not apply. So now friends, this notification 17/2020 which is concerned, it is only providing a relaxation for the new registrations. This notification doesn't apply for relaxation. This notification doesn't apply for relaxation to existing registrations, because here the reference which is given in 17/2020 is the provisions of subsection 6b and 6c. 6b is individual new registration, 6c is non-individual new registration. Shall not apply to. That means a person who is not a citizen of India. For a person who is not a citizen of India, he need not get his Aadhaar authenticated, because naturally he might not have an Aadhaar number. To a class of persons other than the following class of persons. So for these persons, to these persons mandatorily Aadhaar authentication is required. For persons other than these persons, Aadhaar authentication is not required. So for individual, Aadhaar authentication is always required. Then you have authorized signatory of all types. For authorized, if it is a non-individual new registration, other than for authorized signatories, I repeat, if it is a non-individual new registration, authorized signatory of all types have to get their Aadhaar authenticated. The managing and authorized partner has to get its Aadhaar authenticated. The Karta of a HUF has to get its Aadhaar authenticated. So now friends, let's pose few questions. Let's say a partnership firm wants to apply for a new registration. Do all the partners have to authenticate their Aadhaar? Let's have a look at the relaxation which is given in 17/2020. It tells you, to a class of persons other than the following class of persons, Aadhaar authentication is not required. And here it tells you managing and the authorized partner. So only the managing partner or the authorized partner needs to get his Aadhaar authenticated. The other partners need not get their Aadhaar authenticated. Question number 2. Does a director of a private limited company who is not an authorized signatory for the purpose of GST, a director of a private limited company who is not an authorized signatory for the purpose of GST, should he also get its Aadhaar authenticated? The answer is no. He need not get his Aadhaar authenticated, because here it tells you authorized signatory of all types alone needs to get their Aadhaar authenticated. Do the directors of private limited companies who are not the authorized signatory, are they required to get their Aadhaar authenticated? The answer is no. Please read the wordings again carefully. It tells you the provisions of 6B or 6C shall not apply to. The provisions of 6B and 6C shall not apply to a class of persons other than the following persons. So for these following persons, Aadhaar authentication is required. For other people, Aadhaar authentication is not required. So friends, a director of a private limited company or any director of a company, if he is not the authorized signatory for the purpose of GST, for him Aadhaar authentication is not required. So friends, as regards to 6A is concerned, this is the simple summary. 6A, Aadhaar authentication for existing registered persons. 6B, individual new registrations. 6C, it is non-individual new registration. 6D, it is relaxation from 6A, 6B and 6C. If a person doesn't possess Aadhaar authentication, alternative means he has to get himself authenticated, and the alternative means is physical verification of premises. If you do not possess an Aadhaar, registration would be granted to you only and only after physical verification of premises in the presence of said person. The next change is in section 10. Now friends, as regards to section 10 is concerned, there is some change which is there in section 10 subsection 1. There is an explanation which is inserted. Section 10 subsection 2A is a new subsection which is being inserted. This is nothing but you had your special composition scheme under notification 2/2019 central tax rate. Purely for service providers, there was a special composition scheme through this notification wherein 6% taxes was being paid. This scheme has been imported into 10 subsection 2A. Now because of this insertion of this new scheme in 10 subsection 2A, there are consequential amendments 10 subsection 3, 10 subsection 4 and 10 subsection 5. And besides this, there are two explanations which are added, explanation 1 and explanation 2 to section 10. So this is going to be the entire scope of our discussion for the changes which are there in the composition scheme under section 10. Now for the sake of simplicity, let us first start with the two new explanations which have been inserted, explanation 1 and explanation 2 to section 10. Now friends, let's take a scenario. Let's say this concept which we are discussing is not new, it was already existing. It was already existing in an order which was issued under section 172. The provisions of this order have now been imported into section 10. So now friends, let's say there's a person whose aggregate turnover in the preceding financial year happened to be 168 lakhs. There's a person whose aggregate turnover in the preceding financial year happens to be 168 lakhs, out of which 20 lakh was from interest income. Aggregate turnover in the preceding financial year 168 lakhs, out of which interest income was 20 lakhs. Let's say in the current financial year, his aggregate turnover is 165 lakhs. In the current financial year, his aggregate turnover is 165 lakhs, out of which let's say interest income is 20 lakh rupees. Now friends, the question is, point number 1, in this current financial year, is this person eligible to opt for composition scheme? In this current financial year, is this person eligible to opt for composition scheme? Now as you are all aware, Here, the aggregate turnover would also include the aggregate turnover as it defined under section 2 clause 6. It includes exempt supply, and interest is a consideration for an exempt supply which is being made. So the point number 1 is 168 lakhs is the aggregate turnover which includes an interest component. So question number 1 is, in the current financial year, in this year, is he eligible to opt for composition scheme? This is question number 1. Question number 2 is, you assuming if he is eligible to opt for composition scheme in the current financial year. In the current financial year, for his entire turnover of 165 lakhs, can he continue under the composition scheme? There are two different questions which are posed. Question number 1, is he eligible to opt for composition scheme? Question number 2, assuming that if he is eligible to opt, can he continue under the composition scheme for the entire turnover of 165 lakh rupees? So now friends, this position was already clarified by an order which was issued under section 172. That the provision told that for the purpose of computing the eligibility, your aggregate turnover will not include the interest income. Your aggregate turnover would not include the interest income. This provision was already there, well settled in the order which was issued under section 172. So going by that order, the answer to both the questions would be in the favor of the assessee. Question number 1, is he eligible to opt for composition scheme in the current financial year? The answer is yes, even though his aggregate turnover is 168 lakh rupees, but for the purpose of computing the eligibility, we will not consider the interest income. The answer to question number 2, in the current financial year, can he continue under the composition scheme for the entire 165 lakh rupees? Again, the answer is yes. Yes, that even in the current financial year, while checking that whether he has crossed 150 lakhs or not. The provision is, in the preceding financial year, his turnover should be below 150 lakhs. In the current financial year, up to 150 lakh rupees, he can continue under composition scheme. So while checking whether he can continue under composition scheme or not, even in the current financial year, in the aggregate turnover, I will not consider the interest component for deciding whether I can continue under the composition scheme or not. So both these answers were given in favor of the assessee by an order which was issued under section 172. The same provision has been imported into the act in section 10. There is an explanation which is given. Now in explanation, please read the second part, that is, it shall not include. So we will ignore the first part for now. We'll just go to the second part. So I read the explanation for you. It tells you, for the purposes of computing aggregate turnover of a person for determining his eligibility to pay tax under this section, the expression aggregate turnover, please ignore the first part for now. Read the second part. The expression aggregate turnover shall not include the value of exempt supply of services provided by way of extending deposits, loans or advances insofar as the consideration is represented by interest or discount. So friends, here the same position has been imported in section 10 as well. By means of explanation 1, the second part. Let's take an example. Mr. Chotu is a trader. His turnover in the preceding financial year is 155 lakhs, out of which rupees 8 lakhs is interest income. Can he opt for composition scheme? The answer is yes, he can opt for composition scheme. Now by virtue of explanation 1 to section 10, he can choose to do so. Mr. Chotu is a trader. His turnover in the preceding financial year is 155 lakhs, out of which rupees 8 lakhs is due to exempt healthcare services. Can he opt for composition scheme? Friends, please understand, let it be the order which was issued under section 172, or let it be the importing of provisions of that order into explanation 1 to section 10, the relaxation is given only and only for interest income. It is not given for any other exempt services. It is only and only for interest income. So now friends, even though he is supplying an exempt services, even though he is supplying services which are exempt, still he is not eligible to opt for composition scheme in the current financial year because it is not interest income. So here he is not eligible to opt for composition scheme in the current financial year. Example number 3, Mr. Chotu is a manufacturer. His turnover in the preceding financial year is 105 lakhs. Current year his aggregate turnover is 125 lakhs, out of which rupees 28 lakhs. Current financial year his aggregate turnover is 125 lakhs, out of which rupees 28 lakhs is due to interest income. Here, can he opt for composition scheme? Friends, please make this 125 lakhs as 165 lakhs. So Mr. Chotu is a manufacturer. His turnover in the preceding financial year is 105 lakhs. Current year his aggregate turnover is 165 lakhs, out of which 28 lakhs is due to interest income. Can he opt for composition scheme? Now friends, in the preceding financial year, his aggregate turnover is below 150 lakh rupees. So yes, he can opt for composition scheme. But can he continue under the scheme for the entire 165 lakhs? Again, the explanation tells us for the purpose of computing the eligibility in aggregate turnover, do not consider interest. So 165 lakhs, I'll remove the interest portion. After I remove the interest portion, I am well below my threshold of 150 lakh rupees. So therefore, I can opt and I can also continue for the full aggregate turnover in the current financial year under my composition scheme. Now friends, this is as regards us. This explanation what we have seen, explanation 1 to section 10 what we have seen, this is as regards as eligibility is concerned. Now the second question is, on what value should taxes be paid? This is altogether a different question which was not addressed in the order. This question was not addressed in the order which was issued under section 172. Section 10 tries to address this scenario. Now friends, the question is different. Let's take the first case. Mr. Chotu is a trader. Mr. Chotu is a trader. His turnover in the preceding financial year is 155 lakh rupees, out of which rupees 8 lakhs is exempt income. Agreed. Can he opt for composition scheme? Fine. Now in this year, yes, he can opt for composition scheme. Now assuming in the current financial year, he's got a turnover of 165 lakh rupees. Out of this 165 lakh rupees, let's say 28 lakh rupees is due to interest income. Now the first question which we had seen was totally different. The first question was, is he entitled to opt for composition scheme? Yes, that explanation 1 to section 10 had answered it. Now the second question is, assuming he is, not assuming, it is actually factually he is in a position to opt for composition scheme, on what value should he pay taxes? Now friends, as regards as rates of tax is concerned, we have section 10 read along with rule number 7, which gives you a rate of tax which needs to be paid. Now friends, having known that he is eligible to opt and to continue under composition scheme, the question is, should he also pay tax on interest income is a second and a different question. Should he is eligible to opt, agreed. He wants to continue, agreed. But should he pay taxes on interest income as well is the question. Now friends, looking into the rates is concerned, if he is a manufacturer, if a person is a manufacturer, it is half percentage of turnover in the state. Half percent CGST, half percent SGST, totally 1% of turnover in the state. Now friends, turnover in the state is different from aggregate turnover. Please be careful. Turnover in the state is different from aggregate turnover. Explanation 1 to section 10 what we had seen, it simply told you for the purpose of determining eligibility, interest income will not be included in aggregate turnover. It did not use the wordings interest income will not be included in turnover in the state for the purpose of paying taxes. It was only and only for the purpose of determining the eligibility. So going by that scenario, if he is a manufacturer, he needs to pay 1% of tax even on the interest income. So far, without looking into further provisions what we have seen, so far as we analyze section 10 and rule number 7, a manufacturer would have to pay GST even on interest income, even though he is eligible to opt and eligible to continue, but still he is required to pay GST on interest income. But as regards as a trader is concerned, he pays half percentage tax only on taxable supply of goods and services. Since interest income was already exempted, he did not pay GST on interest income. So now friends, this is the position before the amendment as it was there. Strictly going by the wordings, interest income not computed in determining the eligibility. Not computed, it is not a part of aggregate turnover while determining the eligibility, but while paying taxes due to the wordings which were there in section 10 read along with rule number 7, a manufacturer had to pay tax even on interest income. However, a trader was not required to pay tax on interest income because it is an exempt supply. Now friends, this position is clarified. Even this was not the intention of the law, but this was how it was forthcoming from the wordings which were mentioned in section 10 read along with rule number 7. So friends, the lawmakers came out with a solution. Please read explanation 2. Explanation 2 to section 10. Please read the second part. For the purpose of determining the tax payable by a person under this section, the expression turnover in a state or turnover in the union territory shall not include the value of following supplies, namely, ignore the first part, please read the second part. Exempt supply of services provided by way of extending deposits, loans and advances in so far as the consideration is represented by way of interest or discount. So friends, as regards as explanation 2 to section 10 is concerned, here interest income will also not be considered for the purpose of paying taxes inside turnover in a state. So while you are calculating how much tax you need to pay, in the phrase called as turnover in the state, you need not consider interest income. So friends, the net result is, as regards as interest income is concerned, point number 1, because of explanation 1 to section 10, a person, while computing the eligibility, whether he is eligible to opt and to continue under composition scheme, aggregate turnover will not include interest income. Point number 2, due to explanation 2 to section 10, agreed that you are eligible, you can opt, you can continue. Should you pay any taxes on interest income? Let it be a trader, let it be a manufacturer, none of them are required to pay tax on interest income, because according to explanation 2 to section 10, turnover in a state will not include interest income. So friends, let it be a trader, let it be a manufacturer, he is not going to pay tax on interest income. Let's take another scenario. Now let's say Mr. Chotu starts a small shop in the town of Tamil Nadu in April. His turnover crosses the threshold and he becomes liable for registration on 1st of September. So friends, he starts his business on 1st of April. His turnover crosses the threshold and he becomes liable for registration on 1st of September. So friends, until 31st of August, he remains an unregistered person. Till 31st of August, he remains an unregistered person. His turnover up to 31st of August is 20 lakh rupees. So his turnover up to 31st of August happens to be 20 lakh rupees. His turnover from 1st of September till 31st of March is 140 lakh rupees. So from 1st of September onwards till 31st of March, his turnover is 140 lakhs. His turnover happens to be 140 lakhs. So this is his entire turnover for the financial year. Till the period he was an unregistered person, his turnover was 20 lakh rupees. From the date on which he was liable to be registered and he took registration, it became his turnover till the financial year end was 140 lakh rupees. So now friends, the question is, can he continue in the compositions? The question is, can he continue in the compositions? Now friends, let's have a look at his turnover in the preceding financial year. Since he's starting his business on 1st of April, his turnover in the preceding financial year is 0. His turnover in the preceding financial year is 0. Now coming to the current financial year, he can enjoy the threshold up to 150 lakh rupees. He can enjoy the threshold up to 150 lakh rupees. Now friends, his aggregate turnover up to 150 lakh rupees, he can continue under the composition scheme. Now friends, his turnover is, during the period he was unregistered, it is 20 lakh rupees. During the period he is registered, it is 140 lakh rupees. Now friends, the question is whether his aggregate turnover is 140 lakh rupees or his aggregate turnover is 160 lakh rupees. If his aggregate turnover, you're saying you're computing the aggregate turnover only for the period during which he is a registered person. In such case, if you're treating his aggregate turnover to be 140 lakh rupees, he is eligible to continue under composition scheme because he has not crossed the threshold. But however, if you are also considering that turnover during the time when he was an unregistered person, if you are also considering that as a part of aggregate turnover, his aggregate turnover becomes 160 lakh rupees, even though he is eligible to opt, but he cannot continue in the composition scheme for the entire 160 lakh rupees. Up to 150 lakh rupees, he can continue under composition scheme. Beyond that, he has to come under the regular scheme. Friends, let's have a look at explanation 1, the first part which we had left at that time. So now friends, the first part tells you, explanation 1 to section 10, For the purposes of computing the aggregate turnover of a person, for determining his eligibility to pay tax under this section, the expression aggregate turnover shall include the value of supplies made by such person from the first day of April of the financial year up to the date when he becomes liable for registration under this act. So now friends, as regards as that turnover, that is in our example 20 lakh rupees is concerned, that will be considered. It shall include the value of supplies made by a person during when a person was an unregistered person. So friends, now his aggregate turnover is going to be reckoned as 160 lakh rupees. He is not in a position to continue under composition scheme beyond 150 lakh rupees. So friends, after 150 lakh rupees, he has to exit from the composition scheme. For the balance 10 lakh rupees, he has to pay taxes under the regular scheme under section 9. Now friends, so therefore, he cannot continue under the composition scheme for the entire 160 lakh rupees. Beyond 150 lakh rupees, he has to come under the regular scheme. Now friends, agreed? The second question is agreed that up to 150 lakh rupees alone I can choose composition scheme. Beyond that, for the rest 10 lakh rupees, I have to come under the regular scheme. The second question is, while I am operating under the composition scheme, I am asked to pay a tax of turnover inside the state. Now friends, come back to the original position. Here, they say that my aggregate turnover is going to be 160 lakh rupees. During the time when I was unregistered person, that 20 lakh rupees is included in my aggregate turnover. Agreed. So therefore, I become ineligible to continue under composition scheme for the entire 160 lakh rupees. Now the next question is, if 20 lakh rupees is forming a part of aggregate turnover, will 20 lakh rupees also form a part of turnover inside the state? If 20 lakh rupees is forming a part of aggregate turnover for the purpose of determining eligibility, will this 20 lakh rupees also form a part of turnover inside the state for the purpose of paying the taxes? Because taxes are being paid as a percentage of turnover inside the state. Now friends, if your answer is yes, this 20 lakh rupees will also form a part of turnover inside the state. Such being the case, on 150 lakh rupees, you have to pay taxes under section 10. On 10 lakh rupees, you have to pay taxes under section 9. If I repeat the statement, if this 20 lakh rupees, if you're considering it to be a part of turnover inside the state, then for 150 lakh rupees will be your turnover inside the state, you'll be paying taxes under section 10, and for the balance 10 lakh rupees, you'll be paying taxes under section 9. Option number 2. During this turnover of 20 lakh rupees, this person was not a taxable person at all. So why should he pay taxes on this 20 lakh rupees? So therefore, I will not consider this 20 lakh rupees to form a part of my turnover inside the state. Such being the case, then in that cases, on 20 lakh rupees, my total turnover happens to be 160 lakh rupees. Out of this, on 20 lakh rupees, I would not pay any taxes. On 20 lakh rupees, I would not pay any taxes. On 130 lakh rupees, I would pay taxes under section 10, and on the difference of 10 lakh rupees, I would pay taxes under section 9. So friends, there are two questions which are arising before us. One is, as regards as this 20 lakh rupees is concerned, will it form a part of aggregate turnover? The answer is yes, it would form a part of aggregate turnover. As we had seen in explanation 1, this first part, it shall include that period's turnover during when the person was an unregistered person. But however, while computing the taxes turnover inside the state, should I pay taxes on 20 lakh rupees also? The answer is no. Please have a look at explanation 2, the first part which we had ignored at that point of time. Explanation 2 tells us, for the purpose of determining the tax payable by a person under this section, the expression turnover in a state or turnover in union territory shall not include It shall not include the value of following supplies, namely supplies from the first day of April of a financial year up to the date when such person becomes liable for registration under this Act. So friends, the sum and summary of this entire discussion what we had as regards as explanation 1 is concerned, as regards as explanation 1 and explanation 2 is concerned, for the period during which you were an unregistered person, that turnover will form a part of aggregate turnover for the purpose of determining the eligibility either to opt or to continue under the composition scheme. However, for the purpose of paying the taxes, that 20 lakh rupees or that turnover during which you are an unregistered person will not form a part of turnover inside the state. This is the entire summary of explanation 1 and explanation 2 is concerned with respect to that turnover during which you are an unregistered person. So now friends, this is the entire summary. We have discussed two different concepts. In explanation to section 10. This is just summarized in the small table. If you have not followed so far, it is more than sufficient if you just have a glimpse of this image. So as regards as turnover from 1st April to the date on which person is liable to be registered is concerned. As regards as turnover from 1st of April to the date on which person is liable to be registered is concerned. In short, it is that turnover during which you are an unregistered person. Whether this turnover will form a part of aggregate turnover, the answer is yes. This turnover would form a part of aggregate turnover to determine the eligibility to calculate the thresholds, whether you can opt for composition scheme or you can continue under composition scheme. However, whether this will form a part of turnover inside the state for paying taxes, the answer is no. During such time, you are not a taxable person. So therefore, you should not be asked to pay any taxes. So therefore, this will not form a part of turnover inside the state. The next question is, as regards as interest income is concerned, this is what we discussed before discussing this turnover during which you are an unregistered person. As regards as interest income is concerned, it will neither form a part of aggregate turnover. That means this will not exhaust your threshold in determining the eligibility to opt for composition scheme or in determining whether you can continue under the composition scheme or not. As regards as paying taxes is concerned, this interest income will also not form of turnover inside the state. So these were two explanations which were inserted to section 10. The position remains the same what it was there in the order which was issued under section 172. There is no new provision which is there, with further clarity being added that as regards as interest income is concerned, it is not going to form a part of turnover inside the state. So therefore, even let it be a manufacturer or let it be a trader, he need not pay taxes on interest income. Mr. Chotu is a trader. His turnover in the preceding financial year is rupees 155 lakhs, out of which rupees 8 lakhs is interest income. Is he eligible for composition scheme? The answer is yes, he is eligible for composition scheme. The next one is, what is his inner threshold for services? Friends, as we all know, under section 10 subsection 1, a pure service provider cannot opt for composition scheme of section 10 subsection 1. A pure service provider cannot choose for composition scheme under section 10 subsection 1 other than of course a restaurant service provider. However, there is a certain inner threshold which is given. Let a person be a trader, or let it be a restaurant service provider, or let it be a manufacturer. They can provide some limited services to some limited extent. There is an inner threshold of services which is given. Now friends, the question is, as we all know, the inner threshold is 10% of turnover in the state of the preceding financial year, or rupees 5 lakhs, whichever is higher. Till that extent, a person who is a trader or a manufacturer or a restaurant service provider, he can supply services to this inner threshold. So now friends, while calculating the inner threshold, what is the treatment you are going to give to interest income? Now friends, the question is, Mr. Chotu is a trader. His turnover in the preceding financial year is 155 lakhs, agreed. Out of which 8 lakh rupees is interest income. So therefore, it is 147 lakh rupees excluding the interest income. Is he eligible to opt for composition scheme in the current financial year? The answer is yes. Just now we had seen explanation to section 10 where he is eligible to opt for composition scheme under the current financial year. Question number 2. what is going to be his inner limit to the extent of which he can supply services? It is going to be 10% of turnover inside the state. Now, whether it is 10% of 155 lakhs, which is 15.50 lakhs, or it is 10% of 147 lakhs, which is 14.70 lakhs. So, 10% of what? Is it 10% of the aggregate turnover excluding interest, or is it 10% of the aggregate turnover including interest? So, friends, we have an explanation which is there. Section 10 subsection 1. The second proviso gives you some threshold, inner threshold, to the extent of which services can be supplied. There is an explanation which is inserted which tells you for the purposes of second proviso, that is to calculate the inner threshold for services. For the purposes of second proviso, the value of exempt supply of services provided by way of extending deposits, loans or advances, insofar as the consideration is represented by way of interest or discount, shall not be taken into account for determining the value of turnover in a state or union territory. Friends, this position was already the same under the order which was issued under section 172. This explanation is just imported into 10 subsection 1. So friends, this explanation tells you while computing the inner threshold, interest income will not be considered. While computing the inner threshold, interest income is not going to be considered. So coming back to our example, in this case, to what extent can he supply the services? He can supply services up to 14.70 lakhs. So it is 10% of turnover in the state, and when I am going to take the turnover in the state for the purpose of computing the inner threshold for services, in that case I am going to take the turnover inside the state excluding the interest income. So therefore, in a way, it is going to reduce your inner threshold. It is not going to be 15.50 lakhs. It is going to be 14.70 lakhs till this amount. Till this amount he can supply services. Now friends, the second question and a very peculiar question. It is in the current financial year. Please understand, this question is little tricky. In the current financial year, he can supply services up to 14.70 lakhs. In the current financial year, he can supply services up to 14.70 lakhs. There is absolutely no doubt about it. Now the question is, in the current financial year, this 14.70 lakhs, is it in addition to interest income, or this 14.70 lakhs is also including the interest income, if at all I have any interest income in the current financial year? Friends, please try to differentiate the questions. The questions are different. The earlier question was, when I am going to calculate my inner threshold, please concentrate. When I am going to calculate my inner threshold, when I see the turnover in a state of the preceding financial year, in that preceding financial year's turnover, should I include the interest income or not, is a question. That was the first question. So to which the explanation told you that while calculating the inner threshold, when I take the turnover in a state in the preceding financial year, I should not consider the interest income. So therefore, my inner threshold becomes 14.70 lakhs. Agreed. Now friends, in the current financial year, I can supply services up to 14.70 lakhs. Yes, there's no doubt about it. In the current financial year, I can supply services up to this 14.70 lakhs. Now the second question is interest income. I can supply services up to 14.70 lakhs plus interest income, or I can supply services up to 14.70 lakhs including the interest income if at all I have any in this financial year. Say for example, in this current financial year, I have 3 lakh rupees as interest income. In this current financial year, interest income is 3 lakh rupees. Now friends, the question is, can I supply services 14.70 lakh plus 3 lakh interest income? So 17.70 lakhs I have the inner threshold, or I have an inner threshold of 14.70 lakhs which will include my interest income. I have the inner threshold of 14.70 lakhs which will include my interest income. Please concentrate on interest income. I need not pay any taxes. This we have already seen in explanation 1 and explanation 2 to section 10. That is not the question. The question is, what is my inner threshold? Is my inner threshold is 14.70 lakhs plus interest income, or is my inner threshold only 14.70 lakhs which already includes the interest income? Altogether it is only 14.70 lakhs. Friends, this situation is not addressed. This situation is not addressed by the explanation which is given to section 10 subsection 1. I am sure you don't have any confusion. The question is, while computing the inner threshold, when I take the turnover inside the state, I will ignore interest income the preceding financial year. Then I'll calculate 10%. In the current financial year, I can supply services up to this inner threshold. What is the inner threshold? What is the inner threshold? Is it, in our example, 14.70 lakhs, or is it 14.70 lakhs plus interest income, whatever I have earned? So friends, this explanation doesn't address this scenario. However, in the order which was issued 1/2019, the order which was issued under section 172, that order still it is not withdrawn, it still continues. That order tells me that while computing the inner threshold for the current financial year, it is the interest income is going to be in addition to, the interest income is going to be in addition to the inner threshold which I calculated as 10% of the turnover inside the state of the preceding financial year. So in our example, it is going to be 14.70 lakhs plus it is going to be 3 lakh rupees, assuming the interest income in the current financial year is 3 lakh rupees. So friends, this result is what we are getting from explanation to 10 subsection 1 read along with order number 1/2019. I am sure we are clear with whatever we have discussed. Friends, this is the final summary. If you have not followed so far, it is more than sufficient if you understand and capture this. Friends, explanations to section 10. As regards as, I repeat once again, as regards as turnover from 1st April to the date on which person is liable to be registered is concerned, as regards as that particular turnover is concerned, it does form a part of aggregate turnover. It forms a part of aggregate turnover. That means it is exhausting my threshold. However, while computing, should I pay taxes on that turnover during which I was an unregistered person? The answer is no. It will eat up my threshold, but I need not pay taxes on it. The second one, as regards as interest income is concerned, it will neither form a part of my aggregate turnover nor it will form a part of turnover inside the state. So even while computing my eligibility to opt or to continue under composition scheme, I will ignore interest income, and also while paying taxes, also while I compute the turnover inside the state, I will ignore the interest income. So these were explanations 1 and explanation 2 to section 10. Then there was an explanation to 10 subsection 1 which told me that while I compute the inner threshold, while I am computing the inner threshold to the extent of which I can supply services, limited extent of services which can be supplied either by a trader or a manufacturer or a restaurant service provider, for them, while computing the inner threshold, while seeing the turnover inside the state of the preceding financial year, I have to ignore the interest income. That means my 10% will be lesser. My 10% would be lesser because while I take the turnover in the state of the preceding financial year, I remove the interest portion. On the balance, I take 10%. Now friends, the second question, the second result which is coming from an order of 1/2019 which was issued under section 172, after I compute the inner limit, I take turnover inside the state of the preceding financial year, remove the interest effect, calculate 10%, I get an answer. Now, can I supply services to this answer and will interest income be addition to it? The answer is yes. Interest income is going to be in addition to that. So whatever 10% I have computed of turnover in a state of the preceding financial year, that one plus the interest income, whatever I am earning, that is going to be my inner threshold for the current financial year. Continuing with the changes in composition scheme. Friends, there was a special composition scheme for service providers. Notification number 2/2019 central tax rate, where a service provider had to pay CGST 3%, SGST 3%. So those suppliers who were purely engaged in supply of services, they were not eligible for composition scheme under 10 subsection 1. For them, a separate scheme was drafted by notification 2/2019 central tax rate, and they had to pay 3% CGST and 3% SGST. So now friends, this scheme which was available in notification 2/2019 central tax rate, as it is being imported into section 10. In section 10 subsection 2A, exactly it is the same. There is no other changes which is there. Only the nomenclature has been changed. Earlier, the scheme was being called as payment of tax at concessional rate or payment of taxes under notification 2/2019 central tax rate. Now this becomes composition scheme because it is being imported into section 10. In section 10 subsection 2A, Otherwise, concept-wise, the provisions remain the same. Whatever were the provisions, the conditions, the restrictions, the threshold limits which were applicable in the scheme of notification 2/2019 central tax rate, the same things are applicable even in section 10 subsection 2a. The nomenclature of the scheme alone has changed. So friends, similarly, the explanation 1 and explanation 2 which we have seen to section 10, the explanation 1 and explanation 2 to section 10, which told that the turnover from 1st of April till the time when a person becomes liable to be registered, that turnover when a person is an unregistered person will eat up the aggregate turnover's threshold, but he will not be required to pay taxes on it. And also, as regards as interest income is concerned, it will neither eat up the aggregate turnover's threshold nor a person is required to pay taxes on it. These provisions, these explanations are applicable even for the composition scheme under section 10 subsection 2a, because these were the two explanations which were inserted to section 10 as a whole. So two composition schemes now in section 10. Section 10 subsection 1, there's a composition scheme for a trader, for a manufacturer or for a restaurant service provider. Section 10 subsection 2a is a special composition scheme for a pure service provider. Concept wise, whatever provisions were there in 2/2019 central tax rate, the same thing continue to remain under 10 subsection 2a. So now friends, just to have a quick revision, what were the differences or what are the differences between the scheme which is there in 10 subsection 1 and 10 subsection 2 and the scheme which is there, that is the composition scheme for service providers, which is there in 10 subsection 2a. So friends, as regards as aggregate turnover is concerned, here 10 subsection 1, I would say the composition scheme under 10 subsection 1 and 10 subsection 2 which lays down the conditions. So 10 subsection 1 and 10 subsection 2, this composition scheme, the threshold is actually 50 lakhs. If you actually look into the bare wordings of the section, 10 subsection 1, the threshold is 50 lakh rupees. However, the government is empowered to increase this threshold to 150 lakh rupees. However, the government is empowered to increase the threshold to 150 lakh rupees. So therefore, for few of the states, it is increased to 150 lakh rupees and for few of them, it is there up to 75 lakh rupees. So because of this, you have separate threshold limits for separate states. You have separate threshold limits for separate states and union territories. Because the base provision is 50 lakh rupees, the government is empowered to increase it to either 150 lakh rupees up to 150 lakh rupees, the government is empowered to increase it. So therefore, for few of the states, the government has increased up to 75 lakh rupees and for few of them, it is being increased to 150 lakh rupees. But however, the composition scheme which is there in 10 subsection 2a, it is a flat threshold of 50 lakh rupees. There is no choice which is left to the government to improve this or to enhance this threshold further. If at all any enhancement has to be done, it has to come only via an amendment in the Act. So therefore, there are no separate limits for separate states or union territories. Let it be any state or any union territory, the limit is going to be 50 lakh rupees. Supply of services, yes, in composition scheme of 10.1 and 10.2, a person can supply restaurant services up to the entire threshold and any other services within the inner threshold. That is 10% of the turnover in the state of the preceding financial year or rupees 5 lakhs, whichever is higher. Here he can supply any services. There's no inner threshold. The entire 50 lakhs rather this scheme of 10 subsection 2a itself is for pure service providers. As regards as eligibility is concerned, a person who wants to opt 10.1 this composition scheme, he should not supply goods not leviable to tax. He should not make any interstate outward supply of goods. He should not supply goods through an eco who is liable to collect TCS under section 52, and he should not be a manufacturer of notified goods. Friends, as regards as 10 subsection 2a is concerned, here all these four remain the same with the only addition that it doesn't only cover goods, it also covers services. Say for example, the person who wants to opt for 10 subsection 2a, he should not be supplying goods or services which are not leviable to tax. He should not be making any supply, any non-taxable supplies of goods or services. Now friends, to my limited knowledge as it is concerned, I could not find any services. I could not find any services which are not leviable to tax. Of course, there are goods which are not leviable to tax. You have petroleum products, you have alcoholic liquor, but I couldn't find, or rather there are not any services which are not leviable to tax under GST. But however, the wordings which are mentioned is not supplying any goods or services which are not leviable to tax. No interstate outward supply of goods or services. For a composition fellow under 10.1 or 10.2, he could make an outward interstate supply. Interstate outward supply of services was possible. In 10.2a, interstate outward supply of goods or services both are not possible. 10.2a person, he should not be supplying goods or services through an eco who is liable to collect TCS under section 52. 10.1 and 10.2 it was only goods. 10.2a it is goods as well as services. He should not be a manufacturer of notified goods or supply of notified services. Again 10.1 and 10.2 it covered only goods. This 10.2a covers goods as well as services. As regards as the rates is concerned, here for a trader or a manufacturer it is 1%, for restaurant service provider it is 5%. Trader need not pay any taxes on exempt supplies, manufacturer has to pay. As regards as 10.2a is concerned, it is 6%, and even a trader, any person has to pay taxes even on exempt supplies. But however, by reading explanation 1 and explanation 2 to section 10, we get to know whether it is a composition scheme of 10.1, 10.2 or it is a composition scheme of 10 subsection 2a, they need not pay any tax on interest. So as regards as 10.1 and 2 is concerned, neither a trader nor a manufacturer would pay tax on interest. Let it be 10.2a on interest income. The tax of 6% is not required to be paid on interest income. Now friends, let's take few questions. These are nothing new. We are just revising 10 subsection 2a. That concept which was there in notification 2/2019 central tax rate is now being imported into 10 subsection 2a. Mr. Billu Barber runs a small restaurant in the town of Tamil Nadu. His turnover in the preceding financial year was 45 lakh rupees. Is he eligible for composition scheme under 10 subsection 2a? Friends, the basic concept of 2/2019 central tax rate was also that a person who is not eligible for 10 subsection 1 alone can come under notification 2/2019. So similar is the concept over here also. Any person who is eligible for composition scheme under 10 subsection 1, he cannot come under 10.2a. Now friends, since he is a restaurant, his turnover in the preceding financial year was up to 45 lakh rupees. He is very much eligible for composition scheme under 10 subsection 1. So therefore, he cannot choose for composition scheme under section 10.2a. And friends, any prudent businessman would not like to choose also, because under 10 subsection 1, he is a restaurant service provider. His rate of tax would be 5%. But if he comes under 10.2a, his rate of tax would become 6%. Mr. Billu Barber runs a small barber shop in the town of Tamil Nadu. His turnover in the preceding financial year was rupees 45 lakhs. Is he eligible for composition scheme under 10.2a? Now friends, since he is a pure service provider, he is not eligible for composition scheme under 10.1. So therefore, naturally he can come under 10.2a. Also, his turnover is below the threshold. So therefore, he can opt for this composition scheme. Mr. Chotu is a trader. His turnover in the preceding financial year is 45 lakh rupees. Current year, his aggregate turnover is rupees 48 lakh rupees, out of which service turnover is rupees 10 lakh rupees. Can he opt for composition scheme under 10.2a? Now friends, as regards as if we look into 10.1 is concerned, in 10.1 a trader can also supply services, but only up to the inner threshold, and the inner threshold is 10% of the turnover in the preceding financial year. In preceding financial year, this person's turnover was rupees 45 lakh rupees. So friends, 10% of 45 lakh rupees is 4.5 lakh rupees or 5 lakh rupees, whichever is higher. So in the current financial year, up to 5 lakh rupees he can supply services. His 5 lakh rupees becomes his inner threshold for 10 subsection 1. Now friends, in the current financial year, his turnover is 10 lakh rupees. His turnover is crossing the inner threshold. So therefore, he becomes ineligible for 10 subsection 1. And the moment a person becomes ineligible under 10 subsection 1, he can come and opt 10 subsection 2a. Now friends, this is the final summary chart of the various schemes which are available. It is just nothing new is over here. We are just having a quick revision of various schemes which are available for small and medium enterprises. So as regards as threshold is concerned, section 22 subsection 1, that is, a person need not register up to the threshold of 20 lakh rupees or 10 lakh rupees. 22 subsection 1 second proviso, read along with notification number under section 22, as we have already discussed, no new notification has been issued. So currently we are continuing with the notification of 10/2019 itself, which was issued under section 23. There the threshold becomes 40 lakh rupees. Only for an exclusive person who is exclusively engaged in supply of goods. Section 10 subsection 1, the threshold is 150 lakhs and 75 lakh rupees. 10 subsection 2a, the threshold is 50 lakh rupees. As regards as rate of tax is concerned, under section 22 subsection 1, up to the threshold of 20 or 10, there is no requirement to pay any taxes. 22 subsection 1 second proviso, the threshold of 40 lakh rupees, there is no requirement to pay any taxes up to 40 lakh rupees. 10 subsection 1 composition scheme, the rate of tax is 1% or 5%. 10 subsection 2a, the rate of tax is 6%. Now friends, supply of services and rate of tax. Can a person who is enjoying the threshold of section 22 subsection 1, can he supply services? The answer is yes, he can supply the services. A person who wants to enjoy the threshold of 40 lakh rupees, can he supply the services? The answer is no, he cannot supply any services, with the only exception being that he can have interest income. The person should be exclusively engaged in supply of goods. However, even if he is receiving interest income, still he will be considered to a person who is engaged exclusively in supply of goods. As regards to section 10 subsection 1 is concerned, yes, services are allowed, restaurant up to the entire threshold and other services up to the inner threshold. As regards to 10(2)(a) is concerned, this composition scheme itself is for service providers, so therefore services are allowed. The rate of tax is 6%. Benefit of exempt supply of services in aggregate turnover for interest. Now friends, the question is whether interest will eat up your aggregate turnover. Whether interest will eat up the aggregate turnover which is given in these various provisions. 22 subsection 1, yes, this will eat up in your aggregate turnover. 22 subsection 1 second proviso, that 40 lakhs limit which is there, yes, there also interest will eat up your aggregate turnover threshold. Section 10 subsection 1, the answer is no, interest will not eat up your aggregate turnover threshold which is given. That means interest will not exhaust your aggregate turnover threshold. 10 subsection 2a also, interest income is not going to exhaust your aggregate turnover threshold which is available. This is what we have seen in explanation 1 and explanation 2 to section 10. Special provisions for states or union territories or special category states. In section 22 subsection 1, yes, there are two thresholds, 20 lakhs and 10 lakhs. So 10 lakhs is for those 4 special category states. 22 subsection 1 second proviso, yes, that 40 lakh rupees limit which we have seen, 10/2019 central tax, there it tells that if you're making any intra-state supplies within these few selected states, the benefit of this threshold of 40 lakhs is not going to be available. Section 10 subsection 1, yes, there are two thresholds which are available, 150 lakhs and 75 lakh rupees. Section 10 subsection 2a, there are no differentiation with respect to states or union territories concerned. Let it be any state or any union territory, the threshold is always going to be 50 lakh rupees. Should you see the aggregate turnover of the preceding financial year? As regards as section 22 subsection 1 is concerned, you are not bothered what was the aggregate turnover in the preceding financial year. 22 subsection 1 second proviso also, you are not concerned as to what was the turnover in the preceding financial year. All that you need to see is the aggregate turnover in the current financial year. Section 10 subsection 1, yes, I am supposed to see what was my aggregate turnover in the preceding financial year. Only if it was below 150 lakhs or 75 lakhs, I can continue under, or I can opt for composition scheme in the current financial year. Same way section 10 subsection 2a. In this case also, I have to check my aggregate turnover on the preceding financial year. If it was up to 50 lakh rupees, then in the current financial year. If it was below 50 lakh rupees in the preceding financial year, in the current financial year up to 50 lakh rupees, I can choose this composition scheme of 10 subsection 2a.
Subscribe to LearnCap and hit the bell icon to get notified.